I'm the beaten down defense lawyer surrounded by the plaintiffs. I'll do the best I can. I was going to call this out of sight, out of mind. Instead, I chose to call it two ships passing in the night. The tort system and the trust system don't seem to recognize each other. We think from the defense perspective that the tort system needs to recognize the trust system and to get more information about the trusts out there. I want to supply you with some more data that Professor McGovern and Ms. Rabinowitz referred to earlier today, so you can see the magnitude of the problem that, as we see it, and how much money is at stake in individual cases. The trusts have a huge amount of money. Professor McGovern said $30 billion. That's about what we think it is. Go back. And they're paying for the same claims that are in the tort system. And we think that what's going on, either advertently or inadvertently, perhaps in part because of the slowness of the trusts to actually process claims, but we think it's more than that. The trust applications and the trust payments aren't received until after the tort claims are resolved. And that prevents us from getting what we see as relevant, admissible evidence about exposures that we need to defend ourselves in the tort system. And it prevents the courts from getting information about additional sources of money that would be useful in helping the parties settle the cases. That's backwards. All right. So we think the solution in general terms is to make the bankruptcy trust claims more visible to the tort system and to get the claims out on the table and filed or at least acknowledged while the tort claims are going on. The trusts, you've heard, are collections of individually created funds from companies that went bankrupt that have been established under Section 524G of the Bankruptcy Code. And they all share characteristics. The money that's in these trusts has to be paid out. It's not like the trusts are going to save money and someday return it to the companies that put the money in the first place. Mr. Austern, who is the person who runs the Johns Manville Trust, likes to say in speeches he gives that his job, were he to live for the next 30 years and be there when the trust came to an end, is to pay the last dollar out of the Manville Trust to the last claimant and turn out the lights. That is the goal of all of these trusts, to pay out all of their $30 billion. The trusts are run according to a set of rules, and the rules are called TDPs, Trust Disposition Procedures. They tend to be alike from one trust to another. I commend to you, for example, the Owens Corning fiberglass rules. You can get all the trust rules online. All of these trusts that are operating have published their rules, so you can go read them. There's no court oversight to how they operate. And they're controlled in large part, and Judge Kawichi, who's a trustee, can tell us about the intersection between the trustee's role and the role of something called the TAC, the Trust Advisory Committee. The Trust Advisory Committees for all these trusts are composed of plaintiffs' lawyers, and I don't mean that in any bad way. They were representing most of the creditors for these trusts, and they now advise and I don't know if they make rules for the trusts, but they certainly interact with the trustees about how the trusts are run. And they're composed of plaintiffs' lawyers. And some of the TAC members for some of the trusts are actually here today, and I'm sure they're going to tell us things. And I'm sure they're going to disagree with me about some things. Here's a list of the trusts that I've found that are either operating or proposed. There's 57 trusts up here, 36 of which are operating and paying money, 21 of which are proposed and are going to operate. And if you look at that list, you can see the old traditional insulation companies that used to pay money: Owens Corning, Fiberboard, H.K. Porter, Celotex, Philip Carey. All those companies that didn't pay money for years because the process of the bankruptcy hadn't been completed are now back paying money, or are going to pay money pretty soon. So you hear everybody talking about the trust money. How much money is that? The $30 billion is divided up roughly this way. This is present cash value. This is $30 billion now. And this includes the reduction of Manville's money, by the way, based upon their filing with the court in 2008. I assume it's a little bit less than $30 billion because a lot of the trusts had investments in stocks and they've gone down, but it's roughly $30 billion today, and as more trusts come on, there's going to be even more money. But that's the present value. Since the trusts are going to be earning income, presumably with their assets, we think that the trusts are going to pay out over 30 years about $50 billion. It is an enormous amount of money. It would, if the trust were a corporation unto themselves, they would clearly be in the Fortune 500. But the purpose of these trusts is not to do anything except to liquidate themselves for the benefit of claimants, and that's fine. But we think that money ought to be recognized in the tort system.